Welcome to another in our Mine Safety Training video series. In this edition, we're going to focus on one of MSHA's rules to live by 3, Standard 14100, Safety Defects, Examination, Correction, and Records.
Under the Title 30 Code of Federal Regulations, Standard 14100 states, A. Self-propelled mobile equipment to be used during a shift shall be inspected by the equipment operator before being placed into operation on that shift. B. Defects on any equipment, machinery, and tools that affect safety shall be corrected in a timely manner to prevent the creation of a hazard to persons. C. When defects make continued operation hazardous to persons, the defective items, including self-propelled mobile equipment, shall be taken out of service and placed in a designated area posted for that purpose, or tag or other effective method of marking the defective items shall be used to prohibit further use until the defects are corrected. D. Defects on self-propelled mobile equipment affecting safety, which are not corrected immediately, shall be reported to and recorded by the mine operator. The record shall be kept at the mine or nearest mine office from the date the defects are recorded until the defects are corrected. Such records shall be made available for inspection by an authorized representative of the Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the MSHA rules of the road when it comes to pre-shift examination, safety defects, correction and records for self-propelled mobile equipment, machinery, and tools. We could spend 3 hours in this video going over the specifics of pre-shift examinations of many different pieces of machinery, equipment, and tools in the mining environment. Consistently, MSHA's Standard 14100 infractions include incidents with incomplete conveyor belt inspections in which guards have been left off and not properly replaced. Operators often are not closely examining horns and backup alarms on self-propelled mobile equipment. Miners are not adequately inspecting and taking damaged hand tools out of service. Electrical tools with damaged cords are not being examined closely and taken out of service. Also, miners hurry into the workplace without performing workplace examinations and identifying, reporting, and neutralizing hazards. But we're not going to spend 3 hours categorizing all of this. Your mine operator has very specific guidelines for identification and reporting of equipment defects and hazards.
What we're going to do instead is identify 8 or 9 stumbling blocks, roadblocks, or inappropriate behavior patterns that interfere with a complete pre-shift inspection or prevent that inspection altogether. Let's identify them and eliminate them.
As we start this training program, what better motivation to avoid the inspection stumbling blocks or roadblocks than for you to focus on those people who want and expect you home tonight? Who are they? How much do they really mean to you? And what would happen to them if you don't return home safely tonight? With that in mind, let's get started. Supervisors pressured to hurry. How many times have you gone out to that front-end loader or haul truck, and you're performing a pre-shift examination, and along comes the irate supervisor, and he's pushing you with?
Come on, man. What's taking you so long? We got material that needs to be moved. It's taking forever.
I'm halfway through it. I'm almost finished.
Come on, Roby. We just got to get going here. This is taking too long.
Or maybe it's,
come on, man. If you don't get on this thing, I got somebody else that will.
supervisors, this behavior is dead wrong, no pun intended. MSHA rules require a thorough inspection of that equipment, reporting hazardous defects, and or possible repair before the machine or equipment or tools go into use. As a supervisor, you've got to enforce MSHA's inspection rules and give operators your support and the time to properly inspect the equipment. Operators, you've got to make the right decision even under a supervisor's pressure. Show the supervisor the inspection progress you've made and
Listen, I'm halfway through this. Another 10, 15 minutes, I'll be done. I'll sign the paper and be on my way.
Be thorough and finish. Don't get on a piece of mobile equipment and operate it without completing the pre-shift examination and or reporting hazardous defects if there are any. Also, don't use any defective equipment or PPE such as this full body harness. As you can see, there are worn, damaged, and frayed straps on the harness. Take it, tag it out of service, report it, have your supervisor evaluate it, and in this case, don't use it again at all. Instead, examine a body harness properly prior to use, and only then put it on and use it during your task. Your life and the lives of other miners could be put in danger if you don't thoroughly pre-shift inspect the mobile equipment you operate as well as other equipment and machinery. An angry mechanic. Have you ever taken the written pre-shift examination document to the mechanic and heard this?
I think I've got a hydraulic hose leaking on that loader over there.
Listen, man, I've taken that hose 3 times this week. I've got it on order. When it gets here, I'll fix the thing.
Maybe it's...
Listen, I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just don't want to run an unsafe piece of equipment.
Hey, man, if you're such a super-duper 5-star mechanic, then fix it yourself.
Mechanics, you're going down the wrong road. MSHA requires you to repair equipment properly and perform your tasks safely. Your company requires it, and you should require it of yourself to allow everyone to go home to their loved ones at the end of the shift. If during the operator's pre-shift inspection, a defect has been identified as making continuous operation hazardous to persons, you've got to repair that defect. To be more specific, you and the operator have got to take the equipment out of service, tag it out of service until the repair of the defect is complete. In writing, you must then record the defect has been repaired and is approved for return to service. Operators, record in writing a hazardous defect. Take the written report to the mechanic. Ask him to immediately repair the mobile equipment, and if it can't be done immediately, then assist in tagging the equipment and taking it out of service. If you have difficulty with a mechanic, report that situation to your supervisor immediately and seek the supervisor's help. Failure to inspect while changing equipment operators. It happens. Aaron is operating a front-end loader, either loading haul trucks, contractor trucks, or he's transporting material to a secondary crusher or conveyor. Aaron gives Willie a call on the radio and says,
How about you, Willie?
Go ahead.
Hey, buddy, it's Aaron over here on the loader. About 20 minutes. Can you come over here? I got a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock.
10-4, I'll be right there.
Willie arrives. Aaron gets off the loader. What's supposed to happen? Willie's supposed to climb up in the cab, put the seatbelt on, and roll, right? No. Willie must stop the machine, take an inspection form, and then completely go through the examination steps on the form. Willie can't take Aaron's word that the machine is operating just fine. Willie must inspect the equipment as if he is the first and only operator that will use the loader on the upcoming shift. You're thinking, what a waste of time. No. First of all, federal law requires the inspection, and indeed, Willie may find a hazard that is developed during Aaron's operation of the equipment. In this case, Willie discovers the brakes aren't working properly, records this, and immediately reports the condition to his supervisor and the mechanic. Not reporting equipment defects arising during operation. A mechanic has been grinding a piece of metal when the gap becomes too large between the tool rest and the piece of metal. The metal slips into the gap during grinding. Should the mechanic pick up the metal and finish grinding, or should he immediately take the grinder out of service and adjust the tool rest to close the gap to 1/8 of an inch? Correctly, a supervisor counsels the mechanic to turn the grinder off, lock out, tag out, and try the energy to the grinder. The supervisor observes the mechanic make the tool rest adjustment, reverse the energy lockout, and only then resume grinding the piece of metal. Now, in another example, Johnny is driving a haul truck from the mine's working stockpiles to build berms around a lake where the dredge will operate. He's been on this shift for hours and only has an hour to go before the shift is over. In heading back for another load of material, Johnny rolls onto the travelway and he hears an unusual grinding sound in his left front wheel. Johnny's faced with a tough decision because there's only an hour left on the shift and those berms really need to be built. Johnny thinks, do I roll on, discharge the load to keep building the berms and then have the noise checked? Or do I stop in a safe area and inspect this visually? The answer is simple. Johnny's got to stop in a safe area, apply the brakes, correctly chock the vehicle, and then visually inspect the left front wheel. Luckily, it is a darn good thing that Johnny stopped correctly. During his examination, he finds that the tire and the wheel mechanism are loose and they are literally about to shear away from the truck axle. Johnny calls his supervisor and the mechanic on the radio. He reports the wheel hazard and he seeks immediate help.
I talked with Roger. We're having trouble with his haul truck. I heard some noise in the left front tire. Got out and checked it out. Looks like a bearing's going out in it.
Hey, Johnny, if you got any doubts about that, man, just stop what you're doing, and I'll come over and take a look at it.
Operators, while operating equipment, you must resist the temptation to hurry the shift and fail to inspect and report a hazardous defect that may develop during operation. In addition to sparing further damage to the wheel and axle, Johnny may very well have prevented a fatal accident.
Can you see that roadblocks or stumbling blocks can cause you and others great danger? Well, we're not finished yet. We've got a few more examples for you.
Failing to report a defect because you're unfamiliar with equipment. Hard to believe that an experienced forklift operator could miss a hazard during the inspection process, right? Jim's been operating a forklift for about 5 years. He's been a very safe operator. He always gets to work on time. He never fails to properly perform a pre-shift examination on the forklift. On this particular day, Jim sees there's a forklift that he doesn't recognize, and it's parked in the forklift parking area. His supervisor explains that the company has rented this particular forklift while the regular forklift is in the shop for major repairs. This is a model that Jim hasn't inspected or operated before. So, Jim takes the inspection form and he begins a routine inspection just like he's done 100 times before. Forks are in good condition. The mast is intact. The travel chains are lubricated. And there aren't any damaged links in the chains. Jim opens the engine compartment. He checks the vital fluids in the belts. He sees a small hose with a leak. A lot of hoses in there. Jim assumes it's no big deal. What's one hose out of a ton of hoses? So on the inspection form, he doesn't even record the leaking hose. This is a newer model rental forklift, and what Jim doesn't know is that little hose is connected to the brake fluid chamber and brake system. Being unfamiliar with this forklift and the particular hose on the forklift has caused Jim to miss a vital leak that very well could lead to failure in the braking system. Operators, never assume any part of that machine isn't vital to safe operation. With a new or rental piece of equipment like this forklift, supervisors and/or mechanics should provide detailed task training to the operator. Operators, you should study the operating manual in detail and ask any questions that you may have regarding any part or system on the forklift. Ask those questions and read the manual prior to performing a pre-shift inspection and operating the machine. Failure to completely perform all of the inspection. Another example of an improper pre-shift inspection has to do with a front-end loader that Ben is examining and an overlooked and non-recorded defect. Item by item, Ben goes through the checklist. Tires are in good condition. Arms from the loader to the bucket, they don't have any stress cracks. Hose connections, they're secure. Steps up to the cab aren't bent or missing. Cab glass and windshield are clean and they got no cracks or damage. Bucket is solid, and there are no bucket teeth missing. All appears well. However, Ben notices the ground or pad appears to be wet under the loader. Since it rained last night, Ben assumes that the moisture is left over from the thunderstorms. Ben continues his inspection without getting under the loader to examine the wet area. After all, he's late to work, he wants to finish, so the supervisor isn't breathing down his neck. Ben doesn't record a fluid leak on the inspection form. If Ben had gotten under the loader and fully examined the wet area, he would have seen that this is a hydraulic fluid leak and it's very large. If he had been thorough in the inspection, he would have seen that the soil in the pad fluid area is much darker and is actually a vital fluid to the machine's operation. This fluid contributes to the ability to lift and lower the loader bucket and or cause the loader to articulate when the operator turns the steering wheel. Being in a hurry and bypassing one last step of the inspection has caused Ben not to report the fluid leak at all, in addition to not recording the severity of the fluid leak. Operators, don't fail to perform a complete inspection and overlook a defect, and don't fail to report the severity of the defect. If there's no pre-printed category for the hazard, then write it down on the form and report the nature of the hazard immediately. Another example of being in a hurry and missing a defect has occurred when miners have walked past this damaged power box. The box contains wiring leading to mercury vapor lighting on an outside plant power pole. On this particular day, while walking between plant buildings, these two observant miners notice the damaged box, identify the defect, immediately lock out, tag out, and try out power to the box, and then, right away, they proceed to repair the wiring, the box, and they paint it in a high visibility color to prevent future damage to the box. Even while walking about the workplace, slow down, be observant, identify hazards, report and correct them. Anger, complacency causing non-reporting. As a haul truck operator-driver, Fred has been with his mining company for only a year. He and two other co-workers have been called into a meeting with their supervisor. The supervisor informs Fred and the two other co-workers that in 2 weeks they're all going to be laid off. This is going to happen because demand for aggregates is down and the mine is having to scale back the workforce. Fred begins to boil with rage. He walks out of the meeting on the way to start today's shift on the haul truck. He picks up the pre-shift inspection form. Walking ahead, Fred begins to think about losing his job. He can't see a way to pay the bills if he's laid off. To make matters worse, his wife has been out of work for a year. As a secretary at the mine, she's lost her job. Fred feels like no one at the company really cares about him or his family. He thinks, this company is just out to get everything out of me that they can and then throw me away like an old used newspaper. In his fit of anger, Fred decides he's not going to perform a pre-shift inspection on the haul truck. In his mind, he thinks it would serve the company right if the expensive haul truck breaks down, costing his employer even more money. If the company doesn't care about me, why should I care about the company, Fred reasons. Operators, you can't let your emotions or anger in a situation like this or any other situation cause you to break basic safety rules. You certainly can't afford to endanger your life or the lives of other miners by not inspecting the haul truck. Your safety, the safety of coworkers, and your being able to go home safely to your family are all at risk if you don't perform this vital required inspection. The bottom line, control your emotions, perform the inspection, and operate the haul truck safely no matter how you may feel when something goes wrong at work.
Failure to inspect because of distraction.
Clyde is about to start a pre-shift examination on the loader that he's going to be operating at the stockpiles. He takes the inspection form and he starts. Engine oil level is correct. Belts are in solid condition. Tires and sidewalls don't have any major cuts or damage. And at about this time, Bobby, a fellow miner, drives by in a new pickup truck and he yells to Clyde, "Don't you wish you had a shiny baby like this one?" Clyde puts his pad and the inspection form down and walks over to the pickup. He admires the bright white paint, the 20-inch tire rims, brand new gleaming toolbox, spotless cab. Oh, and that new truck smell. Then Clyde starts talking to Bobby about where he bought the truck, how much he paid for it, how many miles it has on it, and what kind of warranty it has. Clyde and Bobby spend 10 minutes talking about the new truck. Clyde looks at his watch and realizes he's now behind schedule on the loader inspection and getting to the stockpiles to load those contractor customer trucks. He picks up the inspection form, and now he hurriedly begins to go through the rest of the inspection. In his haste to speed up the inspection, Clyde doesn't start the engine and test the brakes in a forward and then a backward direction. He doesn't test the backup alarm while moving backwards. Clyde signs the inspection form, and after starting the engine, he just rolls right onto the stockpiles. Clyde has let distraction interrupt the loader pre-shift examination, and he's overlooked two major safety components to loader operation. He's failed to completely test the machine and record the proper loader examination. Operators, you must be aware of and avoid distractions until you have totally completed your machine examination. Stay on schedule, be thorough, and most of all, be safe.
Today we've covered 8 different roadblocks to machinery, tool, and equipment pre-shift inspection. If truth be told, we could probably come up with a number of other causes of violations to Standard 14100. We urge you to stay focused during pre-shift inspections. Be thorough, accurately and promptly report and record any defects, and have those defects repaired or take the machine, equipment, or tool out of service and tag it until it can be repaired. Remember, your life is important, and somebody expects you home at the end of the day, don't we, girl? Until our next exciting mine safety training video, work safe.
During the making of this video, the operators of various mines have allowed the staging or the recreation of certain conditions which may at first appear to be unsafe and not according to certain federal, state, and/or company safety procedures. These scenes were created strictly to demonstrate the differences between correct and incorrect safety and work procedures in the mining environment. At times, incorrect procedures may have been intentionally left in the video sequences to allow mine safety instructors to ask, "What's wrong with this picture?" The conditions and stage scenes are in no way a true reflection of the condition or the operation of the mine shown in this video production. Finally, this video must be augmented by new MSHA rules and regulations that may be implemented at any time, in addition to changes in your company's safety rules and regulations that may be put into practice. This video training program does not purport to cover all federal, state, and/or your company's safety rules and regulations on the topics covered. For answers to any questions that you may have, consult with your supervisor or your company safety manager at once.